If you want to help Myth Vision Podcast grow, you can join our Patreon. There are different tiers, as well as help out with PayPal. Thank you so much. Don't forget to like, subscribe, share, and comment. Dr. Price. Joseph Shellam asks, Dr. Price, would the New Testament have prevailed if it began with Caligula in 37 instead of Paul in the 50s, and showed the faithful Jews rejecting Caligula's demand to be worshipped as a god? Sounds like it's in the vein of Roman provenance.
Like that, I guess that depends on, you mean like if Jesus had lived then, or if there was no Jesus, would these conditions have moved people to create him, as some have suggested that the fall of Jerusalem did? That's hard to say. There were other persecutions where that didn't happen as far as we know. With that of Antiochus Epiphanes, you had sort of a Messiah arise in reality with Judah Maccabee. But would there have been an imaginary savior as a result? That's hard to say. I think a set of conditions like that would have led, if anything, to human deliverers. But apparently it turned out ultimately was unnecessary, since at the probable cost of his own life, the Roman in charge, Petronius, sent, in effect, a telegram to Caligula saying, don't do this, hell's gonna break loose if you do. And Caligula, as anticipated, didn't much care for that and sent a messenger ordering the execution of Petronius. But luckily, Caligula died before the message got there, and so while it's heading to Palestine, it's competing with the other message of Caligula's death, and luckily the latter got there first, and Petronius, who was sort of an Oscar Schindler figure, really, he was okay. But had it come to it where he did survive, where Caligula did survive and tried to have his image put into the temple, then I think you would have had sort of an uprising, and there might have been somebody to answer the call and be like Judah Maccabee or whatever. But whether there would have been then a gospel would presumably, if there was no such Messiah, and you follow the logic of the theory that the Gospels are written in the wake of the destruction of Jerusalem, as a way of sort of rationalizing it somehow, then you'd expect the Gospels to take a little while to come about, and the fabrication of the Messiah figure, though that's still a problem, because since it would have been a terrible disaster not relieved by a historical deliverer, what would motivate you to do this? And some would say, well, according, I think, to William Benjamin Smith and others, they saw the Jesus figure as symbolizing Israel, and so his crucifixion was symbolizing the fall of Jerusalem, the Jewish war. And I suppose the point was that the hope that one day there would be vindication and salvation, though I can't remember the details of that too well. So whatever, if that is plausible, you could imagine the same thing happening after the horror of a Caligulan persecution, had there been one. It's almost surprising that Petronius was not considered a Messiah. He wouldn't have been the first or only non-Jewish Messiah, but that didn't happen as far as we know. And with the case that Joe Atwill and Valiant and Fahey argue, it's a little bit different, because there is a kind of a historical Jesus involved in the fall of Jerusalem. It's Titus. And that's, strangely enough, as bizarre as that sounds, you can't help wondering if, to try to redeem the mess they were in afterward, they'd say, did God abandon us? Did he not send the Messiah? Well, is it possible that, like Nebuchadnezzar, this guy was the agent of God's judgment on us, and that he was a servant of God, and that somehow that has been worked into the Olivet Discourse? Because I have to admit, that is a really helpful way of understanding why a prediction of the fall of Jerusalem and the parousia in what turned 40 years from the time of Jesus, his blood be on us and our children. You're making room for the next generation. Why, if it meant Jesus will return, how did that not get crossed out of the Gospels when it didn't happen? Well, maybe it did, and maybe that was Titus somehow. I mean, once you say that, there's still a huge problem, but still it's tempting for that reason.
Yeah, that is interesting.